Welcome everyone. The webinar will begin at the top of the hour and will be recorded. Connect with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading on social media. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account @ReadingByThird. Please use the hashtag Learning Tuesdays and tag us to tweet anything you learned from today's webinars, and we'll be sure to retweet. We encourage you to share your questions, reflections, and observations on social media. So once again, please connect with the campaign on social media. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account @ReadingByThird. The webinar will begin shortly, and it will be recorded and shared with you afterwards.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's special webinar with United Way Worldwide and the announcement of our partnership with Noggin to bring a special opportunity to the GLR network. I'm Gloria Flores, Chief Learning Officer of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'll get us started with just a few housekeeping details. First, we'd love you to introduce yourself. So you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom screen, the chat box. Share your name, your city, your state, your organization, and be sure to select panelists and attendees so that we all know who is here. All attendees are in listen-only mode, but we encourage your engagement by posting questions in the Q&A box, also at the bottom of your screen. We will spend the last 20 to 25 minutes, responding to the questions that you post during the discussion. The webinar is being recorded, as Jerry said earlier, and a link to the recording will be emailed next week to all who registered. And finally, we will be posting a brief on-screen evaluation during the Q&A, and we highly encourage you to respond. This is what helps us with our commitment to continuous improvement and bringing you the learning opportunities that you value. So before we begin, let me just say a brief word about our GLR Learning Tuesdays webinar series. Many of you are now familiar with our GLR Learning Tuesdays. The campaign is building on its commitment to bring to the GLR network a more predictable and more reliable set of learning opportunities, meaning that you can rely on high-value learning webinars every Tuesday at 3 Eastern time. Sometimes, like today, we have special webinars on our Tuesdays at 12:30 Eastern, but generally all of our Learning Tuesday webinars are Tuesdays at 3 in the afternoon. So you'll see on our screen that you have a number of learning events coming up, and today's 3 o'clock webinar is a show and tell pop-up webinar that will explore how the early childhood field is innovating for impact during this crisis. You'll hear how various partners are advancing their work to reduce learning loss and support our nation's youngest and most vulnerable learners and their families. So in many ways, the afternoon webinar is an extension of today's conversation. Our webinars serve as a portal to access and explore the best ideas, the science, the strategies, the programs for our work to ensure early school success for more children from low-income families. So with all those details out of the way, let's get started on today's webinar. As we all know, these past 2 months have been enormously challenging for parents whose children's education has been severely interrupted because of the pandemic. Parents are overwhelmed on a number of levels, financially, emotionally, psychologically, and in many other ways. They're especially worried about learning loss. We hear that from many parent polls, focus groups, and interviews, some of which you'll hear about today. For the youngest children, who for the first time will not have had a full year of Head Start or preschool, their learning loss will widen the school readiness gap, just as we were starting to make progress across so many GLR communities. This is why we're so delighted to co-host this webinar with United Way Worldwide, one of our founding partners, who together with Nickelodeon and Noggin Cares will share about their partnership and the special opportunity for GLR network communities to ensure minimizing that learning loss. So let's get started by introducing our panel. I'll do that. And then I'll hand this off to Alicia and Lara, who will serve as our moderator. So in order of presentation, first we'll have Alicia Lara. She is the Senior Vice President of Impact at United Way Worldwide. Lara's service to United Way began in LA, where we actually got to work together, where she was the Vice President for Community Investment. In this capacity, she was responsible for the development and management of policy, research, and grant-making programs. While there, she helped the organization achieve success in their vision to end homelessness, increase high school graduation rates, and improve the financial stability of low-income families. Before working with United Way, Lara spent 8 years with the California Endowment, serving as Vice President of Programs, Director of Responsive Grant-Making, and Senior Program Officer. Lara has pledged her career to serve the nonprofit space, working on women's health issues, HIV/AIDS service and prevention, homelessness, and healthcare policy. She currently serves on the board of directors for the Ms. Foundation for Women and Funders Together to End Homelessness. Next, we'll have Gloria Corral. Gloria is President and CEO of the Parent Institute for Quality Education. She has over 20 years of experience in education policy and program development. Corral worked in the early learning arena for 15 years in policy, program, and advocacy. Her experience in K-12 and higher education includes work at the US Department of Education and Congress. She has developed policy and implemented programs informed by years of working with state departments of education, local and state nonprofits, advocacy organizations, and school districts. Her 2 boys, Diego Emilio and Gael Antonio, maintain her passion for improving access to quality and equitable educational opportunities for all children and their families. Next is Dr. Michael Levine. Dr. Levine is Senior Vice President of Learning and Impact for Noggin, Nickelodeon's direct-to-consumer interactive learning platform for young children. An early learning and social policy expert, Dr. Levine is responsible for deepening Noggin's value to children and families through dynamic content, partnerships, and interactive experiences developed for learning and impact. Dr. Levine previously spent 12 years at Sesame Workshop, where he served as Chief Knowledge Officer. He is also the founding executive director of the Joan Gans Cooney Center. Previously, he oversaw innovative grant-making, strategic communications, and program design and scaling strategies for Carnegie Corporation of New York, the New York City Department of Education, the Mayor's Office, and Asia Society. And I've had the opportunity of knowing Michael for almost all of my career, so it's always an honor to have Michael Levine with us. Next is Julia Levy, Senior Advisor, Partnerships and Social Impact at Noggin. She advises Noggin on family engagement and public good, and is the director of product and play at Sparkler, a nonprofit organization that promotes developmental screening and play-based learning for parents and young children 0 to 5. Previously, Julia co-founded Culture Craver, an arts culture technology startup which matched people with culture they love. Julia has also consulted for education and policy organizations, including the Walton Family Foundation, Bloomberg Philanthropies, NBC Education Nation, Families for Excellent Schools, Urban Assembly, and more. She served as Director of Communications for the New York City Department of Education under Joel Klein, and as Project Director of the Council on Foreign Relations Task Force on U.S. Education Reform and National Security. And then finally, our commentator this afternoon is Sabrina Whitfield. Sabrina is a policy and research associate and special assistant to the ED at the National Head Start Association. Our very good friend Yasmina Vinci. With a background in education policy and long history of work focused on racial equity and economic justice, she's to ensure that the most vulnerable children and families get the support they need. At NHSA, she has strived to create useful new tools and community spaces for members of the Head Start community. Most recently, Whitfield launched NHSA's Kitchen Table Talks to share new relevant resources and answer programs' biggest questions during the current pandemic. So that is our panel for today. Let me welcome Alicia Lara, who will kick us off. She is the host of today's webinar, and she'll start by sharing background on United Way Worldwide. So Alicia, thank you for joining us. I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you. I'm really thrilled to be here and for this opportunity. Buenos dias, buenas tardes, wherever you are. Special shout out to my United Way colleagues all over the country and to our partners in the public sector and the nonprofit community. Welcome to everyone. We are here to talk about a great opportunity and partnership. This is what happens when really creative people are working with people on the ground around a really important issue, and especially now. You all know better than I, the gaps that parents are experiencing right now and what they need. And so we're hoping that this new partnership and the resources that Noggin is making available to everyone will be really important for the field. So just a quick slide, if you're not already familiar with United Way, we actually are a global organization, about 1,800 United Ways throughout the world. Started here in the US, just about everywhere. We, as Yoli pointed out, we're a founding partner, proudly so, of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, and I'll talk about our priorities globally and how early childhood fits into that, but enough about that. I would love at this point, as context, to bring on Gloria, an expert and an organizer who can give some more context. Welcome, Gloria. I want to make sure your mic is on. Are you with me?
I am. Thank you so much.
Buenos. I understand that you did some really important work and really listening to parents. So just as some context about where things are today, I'm wondering if you could, one, talk about PIQE and what you all do. You're such an important organization, but specifically as well, talk about this engagement that you were doing with parents and what you heard.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alicia. Buenos dias, buenas tardes. This is a really wonderful opportunity to engage, and so I'm very privileged and honored to be here with all of you. I look forward to hearing and learning from everybody today. As we all know, children succeed when families partner in the early childhood context and in their community. And so that has been our mission. Our mission at PIQE is to empower families to support their ability to engage with other families with the early childhood community, and obviously in school and further through their educational career. Our DNA at PIQUE is both social justice and educational equity. And so we are very much grounded in the reality that in order to succeed, we have to see parents as the child's first and most important teacher. The next slide just gives you a good sense of our reach. We are a national organization. We have been in existence for 32 years, and we work directly in schools and in settings in California, and we partner across the state, across the country in 13 states. Through our hands-on, asset-based, evidence-based model, we really engage families in order for them to have the tools to support and create learning environments at home and partner with their educational partners in whatever setting. And so we have, since our inception, served over 721,000 families. And we really want to emphasize that in order to do that successfully, we have had to work with families in a language that is reflective of their community. So we provide services in their native language. The next slide just gives you a sense of kind of what has happened. Like so many of us, our world changed March 15th. We have had to learn to pivot and to readapt in this new environment so that we would be better able to support what families are doing and doing so in a holistic way. So just to give you a sense of what we have learned, we started right away connecting with families via phone. And we did that because we knew that they would be, the families that we serve are predominantly non-native English speakers, immigrant and refugee families. And so we knew that they would be amongst the most disconnected and afraid in this COVID-19 environment. And so we recognized that we needed to do one-on-one connections with them in order to really listen and ask how they were doing and what their fears and concerns were. And so what we heard was both the importance of understanding what was available to them, but also what they needed most. And what we were hearing was that they needed support to access basic needs. And so we have been responding to their needs, and we actually did a community needs assessment where we did phone interviews with over 1,400 families. We are getting ready to release that data. And so what we believe and what we want to share here with you today is that families are worried about their ability to support and create learning environments for their children, but they can do so when they are able to appropriately access basic needs. And so we learned that connectivity is a challenge, both access and bandwidth, but also that equipment, what type of equipment they have, can be a huge challenge for many of our families. A lot of the families don't have emails, and so really navigating a new online environment can be overwhelming and can be confusing. And so what we know is that having a holistic approach to supporting families, meeting them where they are, and making sure that their engagement is a successful one so that they feel empowered to create the kinds of environments that enable them to be what we want for all of our families, which is to be their child's first and most important teacher. So in order to do that, we recognized that we needed to provide resources in a way that was accessible to our parents. So both in their native language, but also recognizing that there are literacy challenges, both technology and digital literacy issues, and also their ability to access just materials in a way enable them to really make sense of a lot of the information that they were being exposed to. And so really thinking about how to engage in multiple ways, be creative using Facebook, definitely thinking about how best to access families with the technology that they have. And so as we think about what comes next for us, it's really about sharing the importance of creating that trust and that trusting relationship, that even though there are challenges with connectivity and hardware and skills development, it is really by recognizing that parents' desire to support their child's well-being is predicated on their ability to do so from an asset-based construct. And so really meeting parents where they are, developing their skills and their ability to navigate a new online reality is essential. And so as I close, I want to just share with you that this experience for a lot of families is definitely challenged by the fact that there are multiple needs that need to be attended to. But once we recognize that and we can think holistically, both about the social emotional needs of the adult, but also the social emotional needs of the children, especially as they are in the context of multiple family settings, financial stressors, and other issues, we can really create the kind of environment that empowers parents to support their child's well-being. And so as we think about providing those tools and being creative, we want to be able to stress that as these new mediums become available, we want to ensure that we provide a positive experience for parents, because we want parents to feel empowered and supported so they can continue to be their child's first and most important teacher. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Really appreciate that. You know, you can really sense the stress. It's almost as if overnight parents became primary teacher. In so many ways, you know, they are the primary teacher, but without Head Start or preschool or, you know, the K-12 system, you know, it falls entirely around the adults. And so I imagine if you're trying to work from home, you're an essential worker, or if you've been laid off, the stressors are really, they just come to a head. So I appreciate that. Michael, let me turn to you. Having heard what Gloria just talked about, I'm wondering if you're hearing things. Oh, wait, before I do that, I'm sorry, I'm so excited about turning to you, Michael. Let me just say a couple of things around.
I'm excited.
Wait. You can just actually, Geor, you can go on to the, this just gives our impact agenda globally. So as you can see, United Way is not a single issue organization. We really do try to respond to what communities are asking of us. But on this slide, as you can see, having said that, 90% of the entire network is doing something around children, whether we're in the advocacy space or we're convening partners or we're funding in the space as backbone. You know, we're bringing folks together, and these are the assets that we bring to the table: our ability to bring people together, our ability to mobilize people, our ability to raise money and fund in local ways is a hallmark of United Way. So obviously on this issue, we're hearing from parents who are economically stressed, who are calling 211, who are feeling all kinds of stressors. And one of the big things that we're finding is we are looking for, as parents, resources for our kids. So with that, let me just turn to you, Michael, and ask if there's anything that resonated with you on what you heard from Gloria from parents, and then if you could tell us about Noggin.
Yeah, sure. No, thanks so much, Alicia and Gloria. What a fascinating and important presentation you just made. And of course, Yoli, my pleasure to be working with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading in United Way. Again, I've had the privilege of studying, Alicia, the impact of technology on young children's learning and healthy development for many years. And this is in fact a very, very important moment. It's a difficult moment, but a moment that I think that we can learn a lot from. I would say, Gloria, your comments about technology access and cultural relevancy and the need for simple ways to engage with high quality media that are available over low bandwidth platforms are all very, very important and really influencing the ways in which we think about what Noggin can do. So to answer your question, Alicia, Julia Levy and I are recent emigres to Noggin, which is the preschool learning service provided by Nick Jr. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what underlies the research and the approach and the new leadership team that is at Noggin. Next slide, please. So in addition to what you heard from Gloria, we've done our own research about what parents need now, and also been following the important work that Gloria and others and survey researchers are doing. And I'll say just a little bit about that. This very, very important moment is one that really demanded not only a response from us, but from other organizations that are serving families. So we have sort of beefed up not only our own response, but our own coalition building, and what we're about to announce with United Way and Campaign for Grade Level Reading is part of that. I'll give you a little bit of a thumbnail sketch on what Noggin is, a little bit about our history in case you're curious about it. Been around for about 2 decades, but in a totally different format now. Our overall, research approach to learning, and just the ways in which we think about what children, especially who are in vulnerable communities, need in terms of a new kind of an approach. And then Julie Levy, my colleague, will share with you this initiative, which we're announcing today with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading and with United Way, which is called Noggin Cares. Next slide, please. So we've done some research, as I suggested, and also been following what surveys are doing. Next slide. And this is kind of duh. I think we're all feeling anxious these days. There's been a lot of discussion about emotional health and well-being as we enter week 10 of the crisis for many of us who've been sheltering in place, especially here on the East Coast and West Coast, but in many different parts of the country. One thing that Ipsos found is that parents of children are reporting greater levels of emotional distress. This is also true of the research that I've seen from Crisis Text Line, which does quite a lot of work with young adults who are stressed out. So not a big surprise that parents are experiencing higher levels of anxiety. Next slide, please. And working at home with our new colleagues, our new coworkers, isn't especially helpful in some ways. Of course, we are drawing closer, at home, and the many wonderful things about the emotional support that parents are getting from their partners and from their children. But it's quite a lot to manage. I am very well aware. I don't have little ones in the house, but my 20-somethings have all moved back home. And let me tell you, it's a whole nother kettle of fish. Next slide, please. So 6 in 10 parents, are worried about balancing their new roles. I think that's probably an undercount. Obviously, for families that have children who are preschool and primary age, there's also been less involvement from some of the school systems and preschool systems in their lives who have tended not to prioritize online learning and who are learning quickly how to develop things that are for young children, but also scaffolded by adult support, not only via telepresence, but through prompts and supports that are being provided at home. So this is not an unusual circumstance that this dad of both a 2 and a 5-year-old is really having difficulty reestablishing their daily routine and balancing it with what they need to do around work. Next slide, please. So this was Ipsos again, sort of looking at the multiple ways in which preschoolers are using media or not. And you can see that TV and smartphone or tablet usage or video competes with the more traditional active play or going outside. So it's not a surprise that screen time limits, to the extent that they did exist, are being stretched and readjusted because media is an even more important tool for kids and families right now. Next one, please. And you know, it's a good thing to keep a little bit of humor about this. I particularly like the post from Sydney Beer on the left-hand side, which is how shall I put it, a gentle request from a child to complete what it was that they wanted to do. So clearly we need to have a little bit of a sense of humor about what's going on at home to stay safe and to stay sane. Next one, please. These are some of the, we've been doing focus groups with parents for the last 8 weeks. And there's a lot of pro-social response to media, a lifesaver, more family time, independent, viewing with some support from parents, but some disruption, obviously, the disruption in sleep, disruption in nutrition, a lot of stress and anxiety, the importance of birthdays has come up time and time again, different kinds of behaviors that pediatricians are beginning to feel are difficult and harbingers of difficulty that lies ahead. Next one. So, of course, as media executives and educators, we felt that it was extremely important in early March to respond to the fact that so many more families would be learning at home or working at home or both. So we crafted a bit of a response. Next one. Oops. So, I mean, this goes without saying. There's just a real big need for there to be a response. So our online learning service, which reaches well over 1 million families in the United States and 3 million families around the world, has become a bit more of a central focus for how we are driving out from Nickelodeon information and support to families. We have launched something called Noggin Cares, which Julie will tell you about, which is being offered to the United Way and Campaign for Grade Level Reading communities starting this week, and also which has engaged Head Start. You'll hear a little bit from Sabrina about how we've been working with them, and a dozen and a half other organizations. It is a free service for the duration of the COVID crisis and perhaps beyond that, that does not demand any connection via a financial commitment, so there are no strings attached. Next one, please. Here's a little bit about Noggin so that you can get a sense of who we are and what we do. Next one. So as I mentioned, we're connected to the research. My own background is in child development research, public policy, and philanthropy. I've been doing a lot of research, some of it for the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, as I mentioned earlier, on educational media, its limits and its potential. And we are using a body of research that goes back to the origins of Sesame Street, where I was for 12 years before joining Nickelodeon, to really think through what are the unique affordances of digital technologies that can be used in tandem with loving, attentive caregiving by the adults in children's lives. We are very much committed to two-generation play that develops the whole child's heart, mind, and body. We are absolutely committed to not only skills and knowledge, but also social-emotional learning and what scientists call executive level functioning. There's a new leadership group at Noggin, and we are changing. We're hoping to change the world. Next one. A little bit of a timeline on who we are. I bet most of you who have heard of Noggin don't know about our origins. It's actually a project of Sesame Workshop, Jim Henson, the father of the Muppets, and Nickelodeon back 2 decades ago. The first hybrid, the first online and on-air hybrid, developed for several years with award-winning programming, which you guys would probably recognize, things like Dora the Explorer, Blue's Clues, and You. And then over time, as Nick Jr. became ascendant as a brand, The other partners actually cashed out, made back their initial investment, and continued as colleagues of ours, but are not part of the service anymore. A few years ago, as folks were beginning to, as the industry began to create video on demand and what's called over-the-top services, we relaunched. This was well before Julia and I joined the organization. And last year, Julia and Kristen Kane, who were co-founders of Sparkler, along with Garth Harries, had their company, which is a family engagement and assessment company, bought by Viacom. And the curriculum that was created in that startup, Sparkler, has become a backbone for the new Noggin, which is now, as I suggested, reaching well over 1 million US families. We've been doing quite a lot of thinking about how to be a different kind of a learning service for preschool families. We're very well aware of the need for there to be a balanced digital diet. We are not selling overconsumption. We are selling our platform as a stimulant or as a catalyst for other learning that should go on outside the screen. Next slide. So we've also instituted for the first time a board of advisors. You guys may know some of these wonderful individuals, including Ralph Smith, who is the head of the campaign for grade level reading, but you may also know the play and learn experts like Kathy Hirsch-Pasek or Jim Shelton, who is head of innovation for the US Department of Education, or Miriam Calderon, who's the head of the early childhood division of the State Education Department in Oregon, or Chris Surf, who's a brilliant musician and educational media producer, and on and on. We're just privileged to have a great board of advisors. Next one. So just, a little bit of marketing for what's on our platform. Many series that those of you, depending on your age, you yourself experienced, or your children, your grandchildren have experienced, from Paw Patrol, which is extremely popular, to Dora the Explorer, to Team Umizoomi, to Blue's Clues and News, which is back. We have interactive games that are short form games, 2- and 3-minute experiences where children learn knowledge and skills, and also learn critical executive functioning skills such as contemplation and working memory. So, lots and lots of content, which has become increasingly helpful for families that are experiencing this crisis. Next one. One thing I want to mention is that we are also ramping up the interactive book reading elements that are on the app. This is actually a little bit outdated. We now have more like 65 or 70 books. We also have a Spanish language learning hub and other kinds of hubs that are helpful, especially now around healthy habits, and meditation and mindfulness are becoming more and more prominent on the platform. Next one. Yeah, so you can find Noggin on many different platforms. This will become important to your communities as we roll out the free offering. So we'll be able to explain more about this when people have questions. Next one. Just a little bit more about our approach to learning. I mentioned a little bit about this, but let me just keep going. Next one. So I mentioned that the new focus is really a whole child curriculum, that we are blending the new content that is being created on the Noggin learning platform to be focused on heart, mind, and body. We also have a real commitment to sparking interest-driven learning, that is a real focus on passions blended with knowledge and skills. And you'll see in a moment, this has included our partnering with organizations that are best-in-class organizations. This is not just about our knowledge and our capabilities. It's about thinking, we are thinking about what children need and going to the best places we can possibly find on Earth to make that information and support available. Next one. So for example, soon, beginning actually late spring, early summer, you'll begin to see this best-in-class partnership model that Julia and myself and others are creating with both cultural organizations and scientific institutions. This is a rendering of Peppa Pig, one of our favorite characters, hanging around the Museum of Natural History. You'll see different ways in which we're connecting to these museums and cultural institutions, Lincoln Center, Museum of Natural History, the Met, NASA, in months that are coming. And we see ourselves as being really helpful to those who have places that you might visit as a family, which you cannot currently visit and you might not be able to visit in the future. They have magnificent collections, many of these cultural and scientific institutions, that are not getting out to the middle of the country or the Southwest or the West. Many of these institutions are based on either one of the two coasts, and we want to make sure that everybody in America has access to the amazing cultural and scientific knowledge that's out there. Next one. So I want to show you a little bit of a taste of what we're developing that is new. And, you know, obviously during the crisis, kids have been experiencing, as, you know, the research that I shared, you know, as well as some of the others' research, different levels of anxiety. And so we've created more contemplative kinds of content, including a series that's called Imagination Trips, a series that's focused on yoga as well. So we're going to play you a little bit of a clip from the jungle. Take it away, Jerry. Where's the volume?
Take you on a trip somewhere amazing without even leaving home, or the car, or wherever you are. Okay, but to get there, we need to slow down. Are you ready? Close your eyes and take a deep breath in. Now let it out. Another breath in and let it out. Can you guess where we are? Okay, open your eyes. Whoa, we're in a jungle. Well, a rainforest to be exact. This is the Amazon, the biggest rainforest in the whole world. Wait, what's that? Let's breathe in to get closer. Ready? Take a deep breath in. Now let it out. Another breath in and let it out. Can you guess what that sound is? Wow, an ocelot. That's a pretty kitty, but it's no house cat. Ocelots sleep in the day and hunt at night. They're nocturnal. Oh, did you hear that? Let's check it out. Get ready. Take a deep breath in. Now let it out. Another breath in and let it out. What does it sound like to you? Whoa, a macaw bird. Look at its feathers. Different macaws have green, red, or even multicolored feathers. So fancy. Sorry, pretty kitty. Better luck next time. Now it's time to head back. Close your eyes and take a deep breath in. Now let it out. Another breath in and let it out. Open your eyes. We're back. If you ever want to take another imagination trip, just remember, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and imagine.
Thanks. So that's an example. I hope that you all are feeling a little bit more relaxed after taking this deep breath.
Imagination.
This is an example of what the new Noggin is doing around sort of contemplation. We also have a range of new series that are also getting kids to get up and move. It's a time where many children are in the house for much longer periods. So we're creating all sorts of racing games and intergenerational play games. There's a blizzard of really interesting questions, Alicia, that are coming up, in the chat box, and
Yes.
I'm glad to answer those a little bit later. I mean, yes, we are definitely doing virtual field trips and trips to the zoo, and we can talk a little bit more about that sort of thing, later.
Great.
There's also questions about, the 90-day free trial, but I hope that this will give you a bit of a feel for what we're trying to accomplish at Noggin. We have the privilege of great resources, behind us. And this is a time where we want to make our resources available to everyone. It is a time for generosity and for support. And so we're just really, really grateful to be a part of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading in the United Way community. So Alicia, I'll turn it back to you if you're feeling like we should move it along.
Thank you. I'm not going to lie, I was deep breathing in and deep breathing out. And it looks like from the chat responses, a lot of people were doing the same thing. Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate it. Also, there's lots of questions around the nuts and bolts of this partnership. So Julia, I wonder if I could turn to you so you could actually walk us through how everyone can access this, how they can use it, in more details.
Sure. Thank you so much, Alicia, and everyone else. And we're so excited to be here and share some details of this partnership. Okay, next slide, please. So as Michael said at the beginning, in response to the pandemic, we thought about what we could do to help, and not just the people who currently subscribe to Noggin or view some of the content on TV, but the broader community, and particularly families with the highest levels of need. And so what we've done is we've created a bunch of partnerships, 20 plus at this point, including the one that we're talking about today, which we're so excited about with the United Way and the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, where we are working to get these resources like the Imagination Trip and the other things Michael mentioned out to communities. Next slide, please. This is some of our partners. You'll see the United Way logo down at the bottom, but it's a lot of organizations. Some are national, some are local, some are big, some are small. And if you don't see your organization on here and want to be part of it and aren't part of United Way, you should reach out to us and we'll give you details of how. We're happy to sign you up as part of this to get what we're creating out to your community. Next slide, please. So here's the fun part about the actual partnership, which will answer some of the great questions that we've seen popping in the chat and the Q&A. But basically, we've created a way for families to sign up for Noggin for free for 90 days, which is really exciting to us because typically there's a 7-day free trial, which doesn't do much for a family that's stuck inside for months or longer. And so we're trying to create longer access and opportunity to interact with this material. So how it works is that a family will get a unique link, and I'm just going to paste the one for United Way into the chat, which should work. You can copy that and share it with anybody in your community. Basically, you use that link, you click on it, you go to a website that looks something like the picture you see here. You just enter your name and your email address, and you can create a password, whatever you like, and then get started. You don't have to enter a credit card, which we typically do for free trials, meaning there's no strings attached. Nobody's going to be stuck paying for a service when it's over. No marketing. It's literally for public good to get people Noggin in a time of national crisis. Next slide, please. In addition to making Noggin free to families, we are publishing something we're calling the Smart Schedule, which is sort of inspiration for off-screen play. So Michael said this, and I'll just reiterate. We know that it's not great for kids to be spending 24 hours a day looking at a screen, and all of you know that as well. And so what we've done is we're working with a team of educators to create fun off-screen activities that kids in preschool and early elementary can do together with their families to keep learning and growing even from home. So some of these have printables that kids can do. Some of these are sort of virtual field trips. I really, really love the one that we did recently. There was a virtual field trip to the San Diego Zoo where you could look at live cams of the animals playing or sleeping and observe them, or there's some science experiments. There's all sorts of fun activities, and we're continuing to publish these and also working collaboratively with some of our partners to create activities that will be meaningful to families. Broad range of families across the country. Next screen, please. This is just showing we have a web landing page on our website where people who come across Noggin Cares can visit, watch a little video, learn about the program, link off to their organization that they're affiliated with, where they can get information about signing up. We're trying to make it as seamless as possible for families to get this without giving away Noggin for free to families that can afford it. So we're trying to get this into the hands of the people who need it, as opposed to giving away Noggin for free to everybody in the country. Next slide, please. This is sort of a quick transition. Another thing that we've done as part of our Noggin Cares work is we've done some, what I think is really exciting work in trying to answer parents' questions and really listening to what people are experiencing and bringing together some of the leading experts in the country to provide answers. So we're going to play a quick clip from this town hall that we did as a parent special called Navigating the New Normal that we hosted last week, and it's still online, and you can access the whole thing and feel free to share it. And then a little more, so I'll be quiet for a second.
Welcome to Navigating the New Normal Parents Edition, a special created just for parents and brought to you by Noggin from Nick Jr. and Common Sense Media. I'm Jamie Lynn Sigler, and this is our special guest and lead expert, California Surgeon General, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris.
Hi, everyone.
We're here today because we wanted to create a space where parents could talk about the stress the coronavirus has placed on life with young kids. We're going to answer your questions, give you solutions, and most importantly, remind you that you are not alone. Hey, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
How do you explain to the 3-year-old why we can't leave the house?
What are the best things for us to focus on academically?
I am a teacher. My daughter is here with me.
Hi, teacher. I miss you.
They are using so much electronic things. Is that a problem?
I can't get them to stay in their beds. It's kind of difficult getting Bailey to learn, but we're getting it together.
Bye.
Bye.
First up, the basics. How to talk to your child about the coronavirus. Joining us right now to discuss are parents Mary and Alex Agnes. And also joining us, we have Dr. Jenny Radeski, pediatrician, professor at the University of Michigan, and spokesperson for the American Academy of Pediatrics. So Mary and Alex, tell us a little bit about what your situation is and what you'd like to know.
Our son Dylan is 5, and our daughter Riley is 2. What we're struggling with is kind of towing the line between giving Dylan enough information to be informed and stay safe, but not so much that he's afraid. Of course, the hardest thing for him as a 5-year-old is the indefiniteness of all of this.
One of the things that's really helpful for little ones, because they don't have a sense of how long this is going to go on for, is to really focus, number one, on being honest. And then another thing that's really helpful is to focus on the time period that makes sense for a 5-year-old. What can we do today? What can we do tomorrow? We can focus on activities that can keep them engaged in understanding what's happening right now.
Is it okay for me to say, I don't know right now?
Yeah, that's absolutely okay to say, I don't know. I think that one of the things that we're learning is that it's an opportunity to teach our kids what do we do when times are difficult and we're not sure what's going on?
One of the big things that I'm sort of worried about is tell Dylan that if he sees a friend, he can't necessarily run up to them.
So for my little ones, my 7-year-old and my 4-year-old, one of the things that we talk about when we say remember social distancing is that we try to make a game of figuring out how far 6 feet is. How far is 6 feet? Is it as long as that hammock? Is it as big as, is it from here to the stop sign? And that helps us to be able to play, still practice social distancing, but doing it in a way that it's not this scary, awful thing. It's more this game that we can all interact with.
As far as like talking to our younger child, who's 2, things are a little bit different. For her, she's less concerned about the details and more bigger picture. Like she can no longer go with mommy to the grocery store. What's the best way to address those bigger picture issues with somebody who has a smaller capacity to understand them?
Explaining rules in really simple language in ways that just say, you know, right now mommy needs to do this by myself, but we can play grocery store later. If you think of the reasons why she loves that experience with you and maybe try to recreate some of those later in your day, it may help her cope with the new limit that's placed.
One of the big struggles parents are facing right now is stress. They're stressed.
I think that's probably enough.
How to cope with it.
Thank you. So thank you so much for playing that. And everybody can go online and you can go to noggin.com and I can put the link in the box, or Michael can, and view the whole thing if you'd like. And just one quick note before we move to the final screen is that we're doing a companion piece to this town hall tomorrow. Here, I'm pasting the registration in. It's also in conjunction with Common Sense Media, and we're taking live questions from families. So feel free to share and participate if you're interested in talking to some of the experts. It'll be a really interesting conversation. Next slide, please. So coming back to kind of the beginning of Michael and my presentation, this is all really with kids in mind. This is such a hard time for all families. I have hopefully one napping kid and one who's on Zoom school in the other room. And so many people across the country are dealing with similar situations. And we just want to do what we can to help people learn and grow during this time that nobody has ever experienced before and hopefully will never experience again. Next slide. One more. Oh, and this is what makes it, one of the reasons why it's worth it to us. We're hearing already really happy feedback from parents who are using this with their little ones and learning and having a good time. And so obviously we are happy to see this sort of feedback. And also, I mean, we want you to be honest. If people are having trouble, also contact us. But to see how we can have an impact and help people make life a little bit better during such a hard time is worth it for us.
Thank you, Julia.
And we're excited to take your questions at the end.
Yeah, no, Alicia,
thank you, Julia.
Alicia,
yeah.
I just wanted to add one thing to the presentation. I'm watching the dialogue out there. A number of people are wondering about, you know, what happens after the 3-month trial. I just want to say real quickly that when we started the 3-month trial, we really didn't know what the duration of the crisis would be or what the needs of the families, you know, over time would be as this whole thing emerged. And we will be working with United Way and the Campaign for Grade Level Reading and all of your organizations to see whether or not we can extend the trial based on need. So if this crisis is ongoing and it's up and down, this is something that we're going to want to continue to do. I think the demand from your community as well as the other communities in Noggin Cares, if it's strong and this is useful and kids are actually learning and you know, being delighted by what they see on this platform, which is also pushing them to other best-in-class partners, we will extend this trial. So buzz it up, use it to your advantage, and then give us feedback, you know, back so that we can make the case to all of our colleagues that this is a valuable service for America's most vulnerable children.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Julia. I mean, this is such an amazing resources, and we've got lots of questions. And actually, we're going to do a poll in a little bit just to gauge people's interest in it. But before we do that, just want to spend just a couple of minutes, if I could, with Sabrina. So Sabrina, you know, as a leader in the National Head Start Association, I'm just wondering how it is that you all would use a resource like this, and just other thoughts on how to support families.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that question, Alicia. And so just to sort of frame my answer, I wanted to start off with NHSA's vision, which is to be the untiring voice that will not be quiet until every vulnerable child and family has been served with Head Start or the Head Start model of support for the whole child and the family and the community. And so when we saw Head Start programs really begin to close across the country, we knew that we had to be doing really everything and anything that we could to support programs and families, whether that meant just finding high quality resources or providing a space for people to share problems and solutions with each other. And I think that one of the really heartening things is that this time has shown us how tight-knit that we all are, even as we're all sort of physically distant. I've been hosting these kitchen table talks, and so we at this point have nearly 5,000 people registered, and so I've had the chance to really be directly speaking with programs every single week about what their greatest needs are right now and how we can best support them and get resources to families. And so one of the things that I've heard most frequently is just how to make sure that families are getting access to high quality educational resources while kids are at home. So many kids, like Julia and Michael were saying, have a lot more increased screen time right now, just out of the necessity of the situation. And so making sure that we can get really high quality resources and high quality educational materials that are available online to them, I think has been something that I've heard from so many family advocates and so many teachers. We've seen, so many teachers doing those daily check-in calls, but wanting to make sure that in between those calls, that kids are still getting access to good activities. And so that's why we were just so happy to work with Michael and his team at Noggin. And I think that we've really seen, just how responsive that they've been with the Spanish language opening letter, so that we can get these resources to different parts of our communities as well. And it's really just the little things, like not having to put in your credit card information when you get started, I think has been something that people have really enjoyed. And the no strings attached. Yes, definitely. Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Sabrina,
Yeah.
Head Start has been an amazing, partner, and we can talk more about some of the things that you guys have done, but just FYI, over 10,000 Head Start families have already signed up, for the free Noggin trial, and they're number one. So it's a chance to campaign for grade level reading. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, as you can see, there's a couple of poll questions that are up now. So if you haven't had a chance to respond to those two questions, Sabrina, I'm sorry to interrupt. So go ahead and give us your last thought. And then Jerry, if you could, when Sabrina's done, could you pull up the results if that's possible?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess the one final thing that I wanted to add is, so we started this conversation also talking a little bit about how we can mitigate learning loss for our children and families during these times. And I just wanted to highlight some of the things that I've been hearing that are happening across the Head Start community, from Florida to Washington, really just everywhere, because I think that it really comes back to Head Start's focus on the whole child and the whole family. I've seen programs creating really great online curricula and doing virtual home visits, but I've also seen how programs are making sure that families' health and wellness are also really being taken care of. So I heard from a program last week out of Maine that's leveraging their partnership with their local food bank to make sure that their rural families across 3 different counties are still being fed healthy meals. And there's a program that I heard out of Chinatown in New York, been making virtual mental health webinars for their families. And so I think
That's
that
great.
as we focus on mitigating just the educational aspect of learning loss, also supporting our families in lots of different ways. And I've seen that also on Noggin through their mental health awareness activities this month as well.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And that's a great, just as a reminder that, kids don't live in a bubble. There are people around them, and the healthier and more stable everybody is and thriving, the better it is for the child. Geor, are you able to pull up our results? Do we have those by chance? Great. So overwhelming number of people are interested in this no-cost opportunity, and good information, about half and half in the coalition. So if you're interested in actually creating a local grade level reading coalition, I'm sure Yoli can give you some more information about how to do that. For those United Ways and other partners that are a part of it, it's a really fantastic opportunity to support children and their families. So Yoli, I know we're busting at the Q&A. I think we're going to spend the balance of our time on that. So I'm going to turn over that hard work to you to kind of manage this part of the conversation.
Sure. Thank you again to all of you for the great content, especially for helping the audience really know a little bit more about Noggin and about the opportunity to provide this great resource to our families in such a great time of need, and maybe for a longer term than the initial 3 months. So Michael, I'm going to start with you. For the 92% of people that want to take advantage of this special opportunity because they're in the GLR network or because they're in a United Way, they're part of a United Way campaign, what's the next step?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I got distracted because Nadine Burke-Harris was calling.
Well, that's an important phone call.
I mean, the next step is one that, Julia can pitch in here. We've been working with United Way and with your campaign for grade level reading to create a unique URL and a step-by-step guide, which will allow you to send out information on how to sign up. It just includes, it's as simple as providing that link to the United Way and CGLR communities, ensuring that folks know that they don't need to enter any credit card information, and just really, the parent or the family members will just sign up. An adult does need to give an email address. They will be receiving no marketing information, but they will be receiving, if they wish, they can opt out of this, a weekly email that allows them to understand not only how to use Noggin, but more importantly, how to engage in other learning activities and connect to other learning resources that exist. Julia, do you want to add something to what I just said?
No, the only thing I would add is that we are just sharing this with you now for the first time, the link, which I just posted again in the chat box. And there's all sorts of assets, a video, a short video on the Spanish language materials that are available, brochures you can share on social, marketing materials that the United Way team is going to be sharing out to everybody in the community. And so you should be seeing those really soon. If you
Molly just commented in the chat box.
There's Molly, who you see. So look out for a message from Molly, who will have all sorts of assets. And if you find that you need other materials that make it easy for you to share this with your community, please reach out to anyone on the team, Molly or us, and we're happy to help you, because we want to hear from you and give you what you need in order to get this out to your people.
Julia, I'm going to jump in and ask you some follow-up questions because I think you're the right person for these. So first is on the outreach material to let families know about this. Are any of your collateral in Spanish and or other languages?
Yeah, no, we have English and Spanish startup materials and brochures and everything else. The app itself is primarily in English, but there is a Spanish language hub. But we have all of the materials to sign up for the app in both English and Spanish.
Yeah, one of the questions was in particular about Dora, that one of our colleagues who's on the webinar today is looking for a Dora fix. There is a lot of Dora in the Spanish language hub, and other second language learning assets. Another question that's come up, Yoli, is about kids with special needs, and
that was my next question. Please get it.
There's not a ton of materials for kids with special needs in particular, but I would say this, that a lot of the children, and you saw that on one of the slides that Julia showed, who are on the autism spectrum, are big fans of characters such as Dora and Paw Patrol. And there's a lot of research actually around our characters and Disney characters and Sesame characters being really important and compelling parts of kids with special needs interests. And then there are all sorts of assistive technologies that are built into our content. For example, you can read English. I mean, you can put on the subtitles. So there are ways in which this also is useful for kids who have second language needs.
Great, thank you, Michael. You mentioned this very briefly, but I'm wondering if you could just, because it's come up a couple more times, talk about the accessibility of your product, of whatever went over cell phones, for example, for those that don't have computers or tablets and have limited internet. So what's the accessibility, the range of accessibility?
Julia can add. We're available on a whole range of different platforms. I mean, most folks use a tablet or a smartphone device. Other folks have smart TV or interactive television, and they're accessing it that way. If you wanted to access it via a personal computer, it's not an experience that will work. You could watch some of the videos, but you're not going to be able to use your personal computer to get the interactivity from the application. There is sort of a lot of efficiencies built into most of the app in terms of data sharing plans and sort of the need to download a lot of things with Wi-Fi is limited. But Julia, do you want to comment on those issues to the extent that you know?
I mean, it's sort of what Michael said. The only thing I think we could add is that there are these smart schedule activities that I mentioned, the off-screen play activities, and all of those people could access from just on a web browser, whether it's on a desktop or a laptop computer or on a mobile device. And those are activities that sometimes have videos included, like we have one with how to count and breathe to calm down with Peppa Pig. And you could watch the video from wherever you are and play along with your child offline. But to get the full experience, it's better to be on a tablet or a phone.
Yeah, and Yoli, I just want to add, Grace and Pamela and others are asking about, they're going right onto our site and they're seeing.
Yes, they're ready to go, as you can see.
They can't get access, and I'm very excited about that. Just, let me explain. We are a business that does sell this application, and that's why that regular website that's open to the general public would have the, the quote unquote free trial offer. It's a very similar kind of an offer that you would get from a lot of different apps, from Netflix to Amazon Prime. What we're offering here, and what you don't see transparently because we don't want it to be open to everyone, is a special code, a special URL, a special link that will allow your families, once Molly and company send it out to you, to help your families get set up. They will obviously access information on our website, but they will be going in separately to another place that we've created just for the Noggin Cares network. And Sabrina can explain this as well. Head Start has their own URL, and therefore we can tell Head Start how many of their families have signed up. So it's completely taken care of. Don't worry if you don't see it in front of your eyes. It exists at a place that is reserved for you.
Right. So even though we're all eager, part of this process is to connect our partners at Noggin and United Way with the folks that are part of our campaign. And that's when you will get the special link and you'll get the information that you need so that you can get the access for your families at no cost.
Yeah, I guess I have a question about, are we keeping track of everyone's email who's on this webinar?
This is why, Michael, this is why we did the poll. This is why we did the poll. So I wanted to know who is interested, and we have the connect back from the registration list to everybody's emails. So we will have that, and we will provide for. There might be people in our network, Michael, that were not able to be on this webinar. So we're going to be doing our own follow-up outreach to everybody, all the 300 plus communities and their coalitions, so that they have access to all of this information and also have the right URL.
Yeah, and Emily Derry, writing on behalf of a public library, I want to know a little bit more about this, so maybe I'll just give you my email. You can send it to me. You know, the public library is a great idea, but I'm not sure that we can make it available to every public library patron. But if it's in a very low income community, I might be able to do it. So let's just talk separately, Emily.
Yeah, and we will send you everybody's emails that all of the participants and the panelists, so that you can reach out to those folks directly if you want to have an ongoing. Okay. Maybe there's another partnership out of this, Michael. That
yeah, so for sure.
I know this is what you want, and we are so grateful that for you the 30 days isn't enough, and a lot of families are going to be in need, and you're going to do everything you can to see if that could be extended. So we really do appreciate that.
No, again, that's going to depend on demand. So if you guys love this or like this or find it useful, whatever it is, that's going to help us decide.
Great. I'm going to bring Gloria in because there were some questions from Gloria Corral. Sorry, Julia, did you want to add something to that before I bring Julia back in?
Just quickly, I just pasted a support email address into the chat. And if anybody who's on this, like the person from the public library or anybody else who feels that they want to create a separate partnership that's not part of the United Way somehow with us, we're happy to talk. Or if you have any other questions, I saw a question about trouble accessing the app, and we can help you through it. And the people who pick up those emails will get it over to us, and we'll help you right away.
Great, thank you, Julia.
Mm-hmm.
So Gloria, you're still with us, yes?
I am.
Great. You started us off and really sort of bringing in the voice of families, which is always so important. So I wanted to bring you back in because there were some folks that wanted to know how you connected with this many families, the 1,400 families. And, maybe you have advice for other partners on the webinar who want to also tap into the voices of the very people that we're trying to serve and have those voices really direct us about, responding to their needs.
Great, thank you. Yes, so because we have relationships with families, we actually had phone numbers and people's names. And as we have been saying, connecting via old technology, meaning a phone, often was really the only way for the families that we serve to connect. And so being low tech by high touch was really important. And so we were having initial conversations with families about just checking in and saying, how are you feeling? And I think that having a relationship with families that is with the adult that is trusting and respectful, and really for a lot of the families, we were the first kind of connection to the adult environment that where they could ask us questions or tell us that they were worried or concerned. That was really important. And so that's actually how we reached out. The 1,400 families were for the community needs assessment that we'll be releasing. And then in addition to that, we have been calling, we've placed over 6,500 phone calls to parents, just, once to check in, twice to help them really develop and coach them through a successful interface to whatever technology they had at their disposal. A lot of the families that we work with, like I said, are low income, do not speak English as a first language, and have limited digital or technology skills. And so we felt it was important to really coach them through how to successfully engage in an online world, because we needed to help build the bridge to that, you know, to the new environment. And so doing that successfully and patiently, and also recognizing that everyone was doing the best they could under very stressful and unprecedented circumstances. And so making sure that we met families where they were, and then supporting them through a transition so that they felt confident about navigating online, you know, which was something that perhaps they had never really done. And so we did very, very sort of low and important touchstones, consolidated resources, sent text, because that was a more comfortable approach and where families felt they could navigate most successfully, and then kind of built that skill set from that point of departure. But it has been and continues to be predicated on this ability to connect person to person and really engaging them where they are and supporting them in their transition to a new venue. Really, it's a new reality, and so doing so with the technology that they have, and telling them that we all struggle. We all forget to mute ourselves, and we all forget to, you know, our passwords, and that's part of the learning, and that they are smart, and that they're resilient, and that with supports they will be doing the best that they can with their children and families, which is staying safe and being able to tap into those needed resources in this challenging and difficult time.
Thank you, Gloria. And this next question from Libby really will also be both for you, but also for Michael and Julia. Before I get to that question, I just want to call out that the survey poll that popped up is really your feedback to us. So as we complete the Q&A segment, please do take a moment to respond to the poll so that we learn from you whether this is meeting your needs and what more we can do. So on that next question from Libby, who is an early childhood special educator, who has created an early literacy resource with hundreds of emergent level books along with songs and games. She's wondering if you could offer any ideas about how to connect and partner with families and organizations that would be interested in this particular resource that Noggin and United Way Worldwide are offering to our campaign communities. So in other words, what is the best way to reach the families to tell them about this important resource and to encourage them, if it meets their needs, that they can access it for free? So maybe first, Gloria, what is your experience in reaching and connecting with families to give them this kind of information, and then more nuts and bolts for Michael and Julia?
Great. So, you know, the great question, and I think it's looking at those community partners that are already in the communities and working with families. So whether it's their Head Start, you know, childcare providers, family childcare providers, in some instances, as family resource centers, I think it's really about thinking about where families are in this moment and who do they trust and who have they developed trusting relationships with, because right now it can be very disorienting and very scary, quite frankly, and overwhelming. And so I think if you look at the community that you are in and then look around and see who is a trusted partner and who's a trusted voice in reaching the families, I think that's why families pick up the phones when we call, is because they know that they know us. We have been in community a long time, and they understand that our approach to supporting them is definitely from an asset construct and in their language and without judgment. And I think for us, that's critically important. So as you think about those community-based organizations, those family resource centers or childcare centers or family childcare homes, libraries, think about where families go who they trust and approach those organizations. And trust me when I tell you, if I've learned one thing, is that creativity and our ability to partner across sectors, across towns, across the country, really enable us to tap into the needed resources that our family want and need at this moment.
Great, thank you. Do you want to add anything to that, Michael and Julia, in your experience, how to best reach families about this opportunity or this resource?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would love to see the resource, so I can, get a better sense of, what's in, what's there, and whether or not it's something that could complement what we're already doing. So, as I suggested during my presentation, we're looking for partners, everywhere. And if this resource is one that we find we feel will be valuable to our community, we'd love to share it. So anybody can get in touch with me at michael.levine@nic.com. I'll answer everybody's emails, so just send them along.
Great, thank you, Michael. Alicia, Jennifer wants to know what your thoughts are about training volunteers with United Way to connect families about connectivity, but maybe also about this resource. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I know a lot of United Ways are working locally with companies like AT&T and Comcast, and really a lot of school districts are really leading the charge. And United Way is shoulder to shoulder with these school districts around getting one-to-one technology. And I'm hearing about really creative solutions around connectivity, like the use of school buses parked that could be used as hotspots. And while people may think that's a rural response, it's also a terrific possibility in communities that don't have access in their communities, where there is a digital desert, as it were. And so let me look to see if there are some resources, some other United Ways that have been in this space that could give guidance and some ideas to local United Ways on what else can be done. We've been in touch with companies around pushing them around either free or low-cost internet access for those that are providers, working closely with school districts around getting one-to-one technology to students.
Great, thank you, Alicia. As our panelists probably saw, there are a number of questions and concerns just about the fact that a lot of families do not have access to the technology, to the connectivity, to the data plans. And we are working at the campaign with partners and really relying on those partners that are moving very quickly around the issue of digital equity. So we know this is a problem and we're concerned about it. And if you have thoughts about that or want to be part of this growing movement around digital equity, let us know. We'll connect you to those advocacy organizations that are leading the way on that. Many of them are part of the campaign, probably part of United Way. So we're with you in terms of that concern about the connectivity. Alicia, do you want to add to that? Because I know you guys are also taking this up.
No, not more than that, Yuli. I think you've covered it. I think my to-do coming out of this is to see which United Ways are doing what in this space, if there's some good practices that are out there, and check in with other colleagues at the worldwide level about conversations with some of the companies that can offer and to see if there's something that can be done. But I think looking at where some United Ways have been working actively at the local level around closing that divide is, I think, my to-do coming out of this is to see if I can maybe connect some dots there.
Great, thank you. Well, we're at the end of our time almost, so Alicia, do you want to make some closing remarks, and then I'll get to thanking everybody and then the upcoming webinars, and then we'll bid everybody a good afternoon.
Sure, just very quickly, just from the bottom of my heart, thank you to my colleagues and to our partners. You all are there in local community. You're hearing directly from families, and so we're hopeful that, and I'm excited both about this partnership. This is why we do partnerships. It yields such great opportunities such as this. So we do want to follow up and make this available to your families. You know, we'll be talking to Michael and team and to Yoli about how we can actually even push this in the 211 world, because they're getting, you know, questions directly from parents on all kinds of issues where they're in crisis. And so some of this stuff comes up as well. So we want to make sure that our 211 community has access to this. But I'm grateful. Hang in there. I hope everyone can access and use these resources. Stay well, stay healthy. Yoli, I'll turn it over to you for the last word. Thank you to our panelists. You all are doing such amazing work. Really, really. Michael, Julia, thank you guys so much. Such imagination, creativity. So I'm super excited about that. Sabrina, all the work that you're doing with Head Start, and it's really, really important. And then Gloria, of course, the work that you're doing directly with parents, incredibly important. And I just love, Yoli, how you all are putting together and connecting all these dots so that we can work in unison.
Great. Well, echo you and ditto to all the thank yous to everybody. Really appreciate it. And there'll be much more coming from us in follow-up and working with Alicia and with Michael. So thank you all. The last screen that I just want to share with you are our next two GLR Learning Tuesday webinars. As I mentioned at the top of the hour, we have one this afternoon at 3 Eastern time, our regular GLR Learning Tuesday. We'll have partners talk about early childhood innovations, especially during this time of COVID. So please join us this afternoon if your schedule permits. And then on May 19th, we'll have part 2 of the science of reading. Part 1 was incredibly powerful. If you didn't see that, with Emily Hanford, who has been doing amazing work on helping us all rethink what we all need to know, especially if you're an educator, around teaching reading. Part 1 is available if you didn't see it in the archive, but this next one will be on May 19th at 3 Eastern time. So with that, thank you all again. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Have a great afternoon. Stay healthy and stay safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.